So yeah, like a lot of kind of startups using like other tools than Jira to start off with. And we're using Jira for like a 4-person team. And it's like, oh yeah, Jira's too much overhead. Again, it's like how you set it up. We use the team managed projects, which are super easy to set up, like at scale. Like some of the Jira admins will tell you that it's probably not the best idea to use those because you can have a lot of custom fields. Hopefully that's something I would have loved to see fixed. If I had a choice, I probably would do a fully in-person team, to be honest. I mean, like for us, like it's so small and we still like the communication lines are so clear that it's not a huge deal. To like 4 people is fine, but if you have 20 or 30 people, that becomes a lot harder.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Jens. It's a pleasure to have you on. And your career journey has been pretty crazy, I would say. You've started at Atlassian and worked there for close to 15 years.
Yeah.
And now you own a company. You're the CEO of Released, which is a pretty cool product, if I do say so myself. And I'd love to hear about, before we dive into your current product, Released, what was your experience like and how did you enjoy your time being at Atlassian for that 15 years?
Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, it was, as you said, it was a pretty crazy time. It didn't feel so crazy while I was there. How I usually like to compare it, like you've heard this kind of saying, when you have like a frog in a hot water bath, they don't realize that it gets to 100 degrees until it's like that. And it was a little bit like this because it's so gradual. Like you don't experience the growth from like 12 people to 5,000 people. It takes a while. So it's just like a journey that just keeps going.
Yeah.
But like I started at the beginning. I came to Australia in 2004. I met my ex-girlfriend in Toronto while I was studying there. So she went back to Australia and I didn't have a job in Germany. So I decided I might as well go to Australia and see if I can find a job there. And came to Australia and started working at a small web design company. And the business development guy at the company, his name was Billy. He knew Mike from maybe they worked together before. They knew each other. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, my friend has this Java startup. They do Java. He's not a technical guy, Billy. So he's like, and I know you want to do Java, so maybe like just talk to them. So I did. And yeah, it turns out I had a couple of interviews with Mike and Scott, and they said, oh yeah, it's fine. We're looking for people who can join. Little did I know that there was a pretty good choice back then in terms of like all the companies I could have picked in Australia or come across. So that turned out pretty well. Yeah, and like I learned a lot along the way. I started as a developer on Confluence. We had 5 people on the team in the beginning, and did that for 3 years. And then we started the cloud journey already in 2006, 2007. People don't realize how early Atlassian actually started.
That's a long time ago.
On that journey. Yeah, the first version of cloud there was kind of a shared Confluence instance, because back then, like you still, in order to buy or test Confluence, you had to download it, like set up Tomcat and everything. So it was like definitely a bit more technical still for the technical audience. Mm-hmm. But even back then, the way you paid Atlassian was that you called or like you sent us your credit card details, and then we processed that manually somehow. So there was no Stripe or like automated payment that didn't exist back then. So as part of that, we first did just a trial instance to make it easier to try it out, and then we started building the billing system and things like that. So that was the early days of cloud. That was very exciting. But back then, my heart was like, still in Confluence. Confluence is a great product. I love to see like all the improvements they made over the last couple of years as well. I feel like it gained momentum again, so I'm super excited about it.
So I know you worked on formerly Jira Service Desk, so I kind of want to dive into that as well. But it sounds like your interview process was very informal. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first interview was in a cafe across the road, and I was like an okay student, but like so I did a bit of programming, a little bit of Java, mostly ActionScript and Flash back then. but somehow I was like able to convince Mike and Scott that I would be good enough to join. Like, to be honest, a couple of years later or so, with the proper programming test, I probably would not have gotten in. So no,
Mm-hmm.
that's like always interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like almost the opposite. I don't know if Atlassian was like kind of up and coming back then, but if you hear about, tech startups these days and the way they hire and their vetting process and their hiring process, it's like so intense and so
um,
complex that it's like almost impossible to get in. And, you go
yeah.
through layers of interviews, and this sounds like the complete opposite from that. Was there
Oh
a lot of turnover at all in Atlassian with that kind of a
no,
strategy?
not at all. Not at all. Actually, it's funny. Well, back then we had the 12 people, so there was only so many interviews you could go through with different people.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like pretty informal. Like, I actually had an offer from another company, and it was pretty important for me to get a job because I needed a visa for Australia. So that was the main thing. And then
Mhm.
but I kind of liked Atlassian better because the team was younger. They did like agile. The other company was like much more traditional. And I called him up and said, "Hey, I got an offer. I have to accept it by today. Like, do you guys like, what's up?" And then that was a Friday. And then Scott was like, "Oh, sorry, I haven't talked to Mike about it. Let me get back to you." And then at lunch, he called and said, "Oh, if you want, you can join." It's like, okay, cool. So had like one coffee interview just to get to know each other, and then like one technical interview where just asked some like basic programming questions. But yeah, definitely
Sure.
not as sophisticated. It was pretty straightforward. And very little. There were like a couple people who left or who didn't stay super long, and that was fine as well, I think. But generally, the like most people that we hired early on, they were still there after 10 years.
Wow.
So after, yeah, it was pretty exciting because we had the IPO in, I think, 2015, and
Mhm.
the week before the IPO, Mike and Scott, they put us on the all timers, what we call the people who've been there for like 10 years by that time, in a room and said, "Hey, doing an IPO next week, would love for you to be there." And
That's
usually
cool.
when companies do an IPO, they send like the management team, like only the super most senior leaders. And for us, like people were in different positions. I don't think any of them was in like a like executive function or so, but they said, "Yeah, we want to bring like the people who were here in the beginning along." And so yeah, we
Mhm.
went out to New York for 5 days or so, and just spent some time together beforehand. And yeah, it was amazing. It was great. Just get together with everybody as well.
Mhm. That's pretty cool. So what
Yeah,
kept you and the others there for so long if, a lot of them stayed for 10 plus years? Was it the culture, the team, the leadership?
I think like all of it, and the opportunity to grow as well. Like it's like every 2 years I had a different job. Like it was not that you do
Mhm.
the same thing for 10 years and you stay in the same role, but the company grew so big and so fast that you kind of, if you wanted to, you can grow with it and get a different job every couple of years. So for me, like I did development in the beginning, and then we started building out a product management team. So, and even though Mike was like, "Oh, you're so good at like prototyping and like coming up with like new things, and you should stay in development." It's like, the other developers are so much better than I am. So I was like, I feel like the product management is what I really liked. And in the beginning, when you're a small team and you don't have product and you don't have design, you do it all, right? And it's kind of
Mhm.
like where we're at now, like at a startup. So that's what I love. And so I decided to do product management and start working on the marketplace. And then that was the first. Then I worked on the developer tools with Fisheye and Crucible, Bamboo actually first, then Fisheye Crucible, then Stash, and then I moved to then Bitbucket Cloud as part of it. Then moved to Jira software, and then Service Desk. So just like so many different products, so many different roles, and different sizes of teams as well. So you kind of learn all the
Mhm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool experience. What do you think that do you like the general direction that Atlassian is moving in as of right now, or do you think that it was, kind of better in the good old days?
I think like everybody always says it's better in the good old days, right? Like that's what I call the good old days. But it's just like a natural progression where you have to go as a company. There's a
Mhm.
lot of things I'm excited about. I started actually off, but like service desk was always a bit of like a split between like customer service and IT. And when I joined service desk, we basically made a call to go like strictly after IT to begin with, and focus on that. And I think it's a big market, it's a huge opportunity that like suits Atlassian very well. So I'm excited about that direction. And the same with like Confluence and Jira is also like making great improvements. There's like a lot more. There was never sales before. Now there's a lot more sales. That's for sure. And I think it's just a thing that you have to do, in particular in the IT space, where you compete with companies like ServiceNow. That's just largely sales driven. It's just I hope Atlassian, and I don't have much insights into it, how it works or operates, but I hope they still doing it like in an Atlassian way, a bit more lightweight, a bit more like they have to differentiate somehow. Like otherwise, you have to charge as much as the other guys and see how it goes. What do you think? Like, how do you feel about the change?
Well, I haven't been in the Atlassian world for that long, but I did remember like the server days when I was like in my help desk roles and working as a sysadmin. I have had experience with Jira Server, and I did not like it at all. I was like, this is a terrible product. I never want to use it again. And, that was like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So generally, I like where the product is at now in terms of like the development they're doing. There are some things that I would, maybe say they should move on quicker. Some of the feature requests that are like so critical from so many of the like community members and the Jira Atlassian power users. A lot of them want to see those feature requests be implemented, and sometimes those take way too long. But the general product I enjoy using a lot more than I did before. As a company, I guess it's hard for me to say, but it's obviously getting more expensive. It's obviously, getting a little less lightweight, kind of like you mentioned, they're trying to be a little more lightweight compared to like a ServiceNow. But in general, I like the product. Hopefully it continues to get better and, they work on like those critical feature requests, and hopefully it doesn't get too expensive. That's kind of my biggest worry right now.
Yeah, I think it definitely has gotten a bit more expensive compared to the competition. I think it's still very cheap. I don't think they're like outrageous by any means.
If you compare it to like an ITSM product or a customer support product, yes. But if you're comparing maybe their other tools, more like a project management tool. So let's take Jira. They combine Jira Work Management and Jira Software together. I would say they're on the higher end of the pricing as of right now.
Yeah, but I think you have to compare apples to apples. Like it basically competes against like ServiceNow or like Fresh Desk. Right? It's like one of them. Like they're all like in a similar range, and you have to. There was an interesting discussion on in the community, or actually on LinkedIn. Someone in the community like suggested to bring it all together into this Jira one. I actually started writing an article. Like I'll see if I get that out in like the next couple of weeks. But what it would look like, because I thought about that in the past.
I actually had the similar thoughts. I don't know if you are familiar with like Zoho and their suite of software. So they have like that. I don't know. They have like probably 100 tools at this point. But then they have Zoho One, which is all the tools for one flat price. And it's way cheaper, especially if you're using a lot of the tools. If you're using more than like 3 or 4 tools, it's already cheaper. So that would, kind of like what you mentioned, would make a lot of sense for Jira and the Atlassian world, I think.
I think like the reason why most people, in this case, why this person was asking for it, because they want certain features that are available in Service Desk for the general usage, like approvals, for example, or forms. They want to see them in Jira as well. So I think that's like one of them would be bundling, where you bring like Confluence and like everything together into like one like Microsoft style bundle and make it cheaper. The other one is to actually consider Jira as a platform where you can like mix and match certain functionality on top of each other. And I think that like sounds really good in theory, and it's just not an easy way to get there. Like there's pricing challenges, like how do you build a product? Like it's a big change to the product actually to implement it. People might not see it, but the kind of architecture would have to support all that. But definitely worthwhile thinking about and see if that evolves over the next few years. And so some way they're doing it already with Jira Work Management and Jira Software right now. And like even maybe the experience there tells them that it's not too hard to do. Maybe they can do it with other products as well.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I almost like approach it as like the way we use it at Grid.io. It's almost like an alternative to those Office products at this point for us. Like we don't use any Word docs. We don't use any Excel spreadsheets. That's all Confluence. don't use any project management tools. That's all Jira. Anything else that's kind of in that realm, we kind of just find a way to make it work with Atlassian, because I hate using more than a few tools for everything that we do. You know, if you have a project management tool and then a chat tool, then an email tool, then some kind of a documentation tool, and then multiple documentation tools. If you're using Word, PowerPoint, Excel, you're using so many different apps. You have to do complex file storage. It's just, I don't know, it's just too complicated. I rather have Confluence. I rather have a document, see that document, link it back to a Jira task. If those could be even combined, Jira and Confluence, kind of more like a Notion, I would love it even more. So the less tools, the better in my mind.
I'm torn on that one. Like, I actually think it gets too complicated if you combine Notion as well. Like, just finding information is going to be hard. Like, and I think Notion is really good for like small, like super simple use cases. But for anything like more complicated, it probably gets a bit harder. And I mean,
I think you'd be surprised. I know a lot of teams that are enterprise level started using Notion, and it's becoming a lot more common. I think it takes a lot more administration work up front, kind of like Jira would, you know, to set up. But once you have it running and you have it configured properly, you know, it's kind of like a free open canvas, which I like the general idea. It just takes more time and effort to set it up and get it running.
Yeah, but I think, this is where already people struggle with Confluence. If you don't have kind of like early in the days, you got like a wiki gardener to organize your information. Like, if you don't have a champion in Confluence who says, oh God, this is the structure we're going to put in place, this is how you find things, it just gets like quickly out of hand. And that's where the structure in Jira, in particular for project management, like helps a lot. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how it goes. But I think there's definitely like
pros
less
and
tools
cons
is
to
definitely
both.
good, but pros and cons.
Yeah, like Jira, I love Jira because it is like you open up a project, you're done, everything's there, your columns are organized, you just add those, you're good to go.
That's right.
When you compare it to Notion, you know, you have to build out the pages, the databases, and all that. There's a little more back end work versus Jira, but I also love the flexibility at the same time. So it's kind of like, you know, I'm torn in the middle. Like, I want that customization, but I want it to be easy too, and not too complicated for us to manage all of our projects.
Yeah, and I mean, Confluence goes a little bit more in that direction with like Confluence database is still early with it, but and then the whiteboards in Confluence, I think that actually was a good decision, because originally whiteboard started off as a separate product, and then they decided to make it, and then
so it was like a completely separate like tool that wasn't integrated with Confluence at all. Interesting. Yeah, that is a good move, because I probably wouldn't use it unless it was in Confluence, and right now I use it all the time.
Exactly. I think that's probably what I realized. Like, having it as part of Confluence is just like such an advantage. Like, over like I like Miro as well. Like, Miro is a great tool, but sometimes you just need like a quick diagram or something. So like spinning up an extra tool for it is not necessary. So having a Confluence page where you can let's put a like a chart in there, or like draw something very quick in Confluence. Just, as you said, like having everything in one place makes a big difference.
Yeah. Let's talk about released. How did you come to create the product, and what pushed you in the direction of, you know, founding this company and building this Jira plugin?
Yeah, so after Atlassian, I joined a friend's startup in the like search AI space. So basically built like a search platform that then had AI capabilities as well. Pretty early on, it was like 2 or 3 years before OpenAI came, and it was pretty fun to work at. But so I joined when we had 8 people. We sold the company when we had 40. And one thing that I had to do as like the head of product there was to communicate with customers, like every update, and make sure everybody finds out about the changes we make to the APIs and to the product. And it just like was such a pain to write release notes. So I looked at a tool to do it and kind of evaluated like most of them. And the thing was that they all seemed to like, they made it easy to publish something and kind of send it out, notifications, but none of them actually helped me write the release notes. So I was like, oh, like, what if I just want to have like a change log of the Jira tickets that I have? Like, can I move them? Like, nothing really integrated with it. And it's like, that seems like a massive gap somehow. So I ended up writing like a script that pulled information out of Jira. If the Jira ticket had like a certain label on it that was public, like a public label, then it pulled information from like the release notes field and then published it to the website. So that was the first hacky version. And then we sold the company. I was thinking about what I want to do next, and actually pinged. There's like a Atlassian alumni Slack channel, and I sent a message in there and just see if anyone was interested in like thinking about like doing a company, like starting something, just exploring some ideas. And then Adam wrote back within like 5 minutes. And Adam and I worked together on Bitbucket server, like formerly known as Stash, back in the days. And yes, he's like, I'm happy to explore something. So we got started on a couple ideas. And then Stefan, who also worked with us on Bitbucket server, like he also joined exploring those ideas. And basically, actually we explored a different idea first, was around management. I was like, how do you as a manager make sure you give feedback properly and kind of like capture it all? That was always a struggle. So we built like a prototype for like 2 or 3 months. But then when I did like 30 interviews with people, everybody say, yeah, that's a nice idea. That's cool. I might try it out. And then as soon as I like actually thought about like what they talked about in those interviews, like all the prompts that they had were not prompts with a tool. Like everybody used a different tool for note taking and kind of like giving feedback. But the prompts that they have were usually interpersonal prompts that you just can't solve with a tool. Like that's just like something else. Yeah. So I basically like realized this like a hard space. You also like, how do you sell this in like HR, and it was tricky. So we basically said, okay, let's kill it. Let's explore the second idea that we had. It was like making changelogs better. It's like much smaller scope, we thought. Much easier. We can build something really quick. So we start on that. And the idea was to start with the changelog, and the broader mission that we always had was like, how do we improve customer and stakeholder communication? So taking that problem from the startup, communicating to customers and doing that fast and effectively, and like doing it in like every week or whatever your cadence is. There was like one part of it. The second one is what I experienced at Atlassian, communicating with the rest of the team. So whether you as a product team had to communicate to sales or marketing, I found it really hard to keep those teams in the loop because they were usually in different time zones, often in the US, and we were in Australia. Keeping them up to date, what's happening on the roadmap, when features ship. Even though we had in Jira, they don't look into Jira, and then still like usually information is often too much or not tailored to that audience. So that was kind of the second part. And you also had like platform teams where the other product teams needed to know like what's been shipping in the platform. So what features can we kind of absorb into product and what's coming up. So that's kind of the second problem that we looked at. We basically started off with the release notes, and ChatGPT just came along as well. We actually started experimenting with it before ChatGPT came out, and was just magical. And then as soon as ChatGPT came out, it was like, the magic is kind of like ruined now. Now everybody has can use it. If you played with the playground before, it was just like, this is like amazing technology. If we can build a product, like it will blow people away. And like 3 months later, like everybody's like, yeah, it's pretty normal now.
Yeah.
But still, like while like everything else is like there's often like a wrapper around the AI, and it's kind of like what we do as well. We basically with release now, we take your Jira tickets. We give you the ability to like filter smartly to the relevant items that have been released, and then we'll turn that into a release notes for you using a template and using AI and like custom prompts, and then the distribution part and the AI part, like actually building the AI part was like fairly quick, maybe like a couple of weeks or so. It's like all the other pieces took us like a year and a half. So there's a lot around it in terms of kind of the distribution, how you present the email, what's the flow as well in order to create it and make that nice. And that's what people really appreciate about it, that it's not like a separate tool that sits outside of kind of your project management, but it's like well integrated. You can just go there from Jira, you say like, I want to create a new release, here are your tickets, generate it and then send it, and it's just super quick, no different permissions, you don't need access to another tool. So I think that's really what we saw as a big gap in the market.
Would you say that the released product replaces your job that you did previously, partially or maybe entirely?
No, I think it's like it still takes you a little while. So there's different levels of releases. Like if you want to do like just a release to keep people internally updated, you might not even have to modify the text. But if you want to communicate to customers, you do want to tell a bit of a story around it. So you want to make sure that you release the right features together. You want to make sure that you put some images or videos in there to make it engaging. Maybe kind of customize the text.
ChatGPT could do that nowadays, right?
Yeah, the images are still like, usually you have to take some screenshots from the product in order to make it interesting, and that's just not quite possible yet. I tried to do some fake screenshots.
There's another product idea for you.
Yeah, that might be something. Yeah, index your product and then create screenshot, but usually it's the new stuff that's in it. It's not in a product, or It'll be interesting to see how that's.
I have seen kind of similar tools where they're going to create a video for you based around your UI, like a Figma UI. So they'll do a similar video to, this typical product, like zoom in, click the button. I have seen those. So it'd be really interesting to have something in like your staging environment where you have the product ready, you deploy the software and it kind of does that for you. That would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I spent probably most time with like making the videos, and like the release notes was always like a small part of the job. And it's the thing is like it's a small part of the job, but it's an underappreciated part of the job, because you can build all the coolest features, but if you don't tell a story around them, if you don't get that message to your customers, then like nobody knows about those features. So people like often like, I just actually before this call, I sent a message to a friend because I saw them like announcing a new feature for their product on LinkedIn, and I went to the changelog that they linked, and the changelog basically had the same information as the thing that they had on LinkedIn, which was pretty short, like a basic screenshot, even though they updated like 3 major areas of the product, but no screenshot of those areas or no video explaining it. And I was like, dude, like it's a massive opportunity that you have here to show the progress you're making, and it's just not like you have like a couple paragraphs about something you did, but it doesn't come across.
So with Released, you kind of moved away from being a part of that corporate, larger scale company and building something of your own. What is the biggest difference in how you approach communication with your team now, and compared to how it was with Atlassian back in the corporate days?
Yeah, it depends on which phase of Atlassian. So in the end, we had like a team, like for example, running Jira, we had like 160 people in that group, in the R&D group. So there you run basically town halls, like weekly town halls, to get everyone on the same page. But usually you have your kind of leadership team, which you communicate closely with, and then you have like check-ins with the sub teams, and obviously with marketing team. But it's a lot more formal than what we do now. With the smaller teams at Atlassian, let's say, for example, the staff team was about 18 people. It was probably similar to what we have now, except like at the moment where everybody's remote, so it's a lot of Slack and video calls. With that, like everybody sits together, you like walk over to people and say like, how is it going? That's probably my favorite phase of like working with a team like that. Like now it's good with 4 people as well, but up to like 20, 30 people, where you get everyone still in like the same room or in the same like level on the office, and you can walk up to people and just have a discussion. That's the most fun to me.
Yeah. Is your team primarily remote right now, or are you guys in person at all?
Now we're primarily remote because the 3 of us live in Sydney, but pretty far apart. So like Adam lives out like an hour drive. So if he has to come to the city, it's like 2 hours gone of his day. So it doesn't really make sense for us to get like an office. And then we have Stefan, who joined us from Germany. So that's even harder to get into the office for him.
Right. There's a lot of controversy around the in-person versus remote work-life balance, lifestyle. Do you think there is a benefit to having an in-person team? I know a lot of companies are kind of forcing that, especially the larger organizations. Do you think there's any real benefit to having a fully in-person team?
I think so. Like, if I had a choice, I probably would do a fully in-person team, to be honest. I mean, like, for us, like, it's so small and we still, like, the communication lines are so clear that it's not a huge deal. To, like, 4 people is fine, but if you have 20 or 30 people, that becomes a lot harder.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be full in person. Like, even if you like 3 days a week or so, like, I think that would make a massive difference, because you just can get into a room, like the ideas you get from like just talking to people like ad hoc just doesn't happen remotely, right? Like, you don't.
So it's mostly like the communication aspect of it. Is there anything
I think
else, like
so.
maybe if you're looking at the total effort or like the total work, is it any different from remote versus in person?
If you have a small team like dedicated, it's not. But in the thing is, as you get like a larger team, and depends on the people that you have on a team. For if you have like a super high performing team or organization, like that's probably fine. Like, they probably work the same way. But the chances are, the bigger the team, the more likely it is that you have a few people that are just not as driven, and it's much easier for them to hide in kind of like in an environment that's completely remote. Like, it's just so hard. It's like always reminds me of the Silicon Valley TV show where the guy like hangs out on the roof, and that's just like so much easier to hang out on the roof if you're remote, right? Like, probably hang out at the beach and nobody knows. And I talk to people and I say, oh, I had like a long surf, like 3 hours at the beach at lunchtime, and so you just hear those stories quite a lot, and that just makes me a bit cautious. I think there's an advantage personally about like being in person.
Yeah, that makes sense. Diving back into Jira a little bit, you mentioned that a lot of teams have kind of a love-hate relationship with Jira. In your experience, what do you think the root cause of this frustration is? And do you think it reflects maybe something more about how we approach productivity and work as a whole today?
I think most of the time when people have a love-hate relationship with Jira is because Jira is not set up correctly for them, or there's too much process. Because the tool itself is fine. Like, obviously there's always things that you could improve. I wish like some parts were a little bit faster, or like this like feature like this. There's always something that can be better. But mostly when people are really frustrated with the product, it's because there's a lot of process. There's like don't know, like approvals probably not in Jira. There's one, so it's management, but a lot of steps in the Kanban board or the Scrum board. There's a lot of like Scrum process around it. There's a lot of like meetings that come with that process. So I think it's more a Scrum thing or process thing than necessarily Jira. I think it's like, oh, you don't have permission to move something into a certain column, or if there's too much process like put into the tool itself, then it gets frustrating, and that's what people think.
That's the exact answer I actually give most of the teams that I've worked with. If they don't enjoy using Jira, or if they, for some reason don't like it, it's usually the way you set it up. And Jira is so flexible and like customizable in the way that you can add, so many workflow steps, so many columns in your Kanban board. It could get overwhelming. And at the same time, you might not set it up with best practices in mind. And typically, if you restructure it, if you kind of rework the product itself around your team, around your workflow, usually that'll get you to a point where you love it more than hate it. Maybe don't love it 100%, but on the spectrum where you were 50-50, you might be 70-30 now. But I totally agree, and that's the exact answer I give every single time.
So like a lot of kind of startups using like other tools than Jira to start off with, and we're using Jira for like a 4-person team, and it's like, oh yeah, Jira's too much overhead. Again, it's like how you set it up. We use the team managed projects, which are super easy to set up. Like, at scale. Like some of the Jira admins will tell you that it's probably not the best idea to use those because you can have a lot of custom fields. Hopefully that's something I would have loved to see fixed, by the way. But it works really well for us. It's like super simple. We basically use like one Jira development project, and we have a Jira product discovery project set up for just gathering ideas and figuring out higher level priorities and what we're going to work on next on the bigger theme. And then the rest is just on the development project as like the delivery tasks. And in the beginning, we actually did have like a long backlog where we just like captured all the things, but we started to just like not even look at that backlog anymore. And talked to a couple other teams. They basically, I think they ended up with a backlog of 300 items or 500 items. And that's where people get frustrated because you have to go through those items. It's kind of like baggage that you have to look at and sort through all the time.
So what is the alternative then to a backlog? Because I know almost every team I work with, I even suggest a backlog. What is the alternative that you use?
So the alternative is that, and I think this is what we're going to do. Like if an item is on the backlog for 6 months or like a year and it hasn't been touched, gets deleted.
That is a great approach.
If it's important, it will come back. So if you don't hear about it over and over again, it's probably not important. So that's kind of the approach that I take.
Have you utilized maybe product discovery to kind of use that as like a backlog in a way, collecting that customer feedback, creating those ideas, and then porting those into a backlog once they're more refined and ready for development?
Yeah, so I think the backlog items that we had in development were a lot smaller in terms of scope. It was like, or like add this like small feature or fix this thing. Like it's like much smaller. So that wouldn't even make it on like a product discovery backlog. Product discovery is more about like bigger ideas, like scheduled post or like some major functionality, rather than like small bugs or like small things.
That makes sense. Do you typically prioritize backlog items as well, like high, medium, low?
No, not even. I think there's obviously, if something comes in, it's urgent, like in terms of a bug, like if we can fix it right away, we do it. There's a certain amount of like bug fixing we always do every week. We always want to keep that relatively low, but there's like obviously like a critical things like here, these are like really important or these are like minor. We do have some priorities there. Yeah, but in general, like if it comes up once and if it's not important enough, then it just goes away. And that works really well at our scale. Even even at a bigger scale, I feel like, like look at Atlassian's Jira.Atlassian.com, right? It's like a massive backlog. Like never gonna go back to that. And I think we can talk about this as well. It's like about setting expectations. Like it's like if actually I'll come back to this. Like the way Jira handles feature requests or Atlassian handles feature requests worked really well for us when we were small. When we were 12 people, like 20 people, 50 people, getting that feedback directly from customers on the Jira tickets and them seeing us like work on it and deliver it. Like that was pretty like exciting for them to see all that work getting done. And it was like great for us to get feedback. The problem is that process never really changed. Like it's still like Jira, people can create tickets, they can create comments there. And as we grew, we basically on a team, we had like one product manager always dedicated, like here it's your week to look after Jira.Atlassian.com to triage the new bug fixes or incoming features and respond to them. And then kind of keep up to date the top 50 or top 100. Which just becomes impossible. You don't see as many updates anymore. And there's two reasons. Like number one, it's like a lot of work to keep on top of it all. And number two is that some tickets are so like long, people are frustrated. So when you do leave a comment and don't have like good news that it's been delivered or not delivered to the way everybody wanted on that ticket, people just get pretty nasty these days. So it's just very toxic. I think like when I was still there, I was like advocating for actually shutting it down because I don't feel like it helps. And like completely shutting it down is probably not the right approach. And that's kind of what we're looking to solve as well in terms of like broader customer communication, because we have a public roadmap. And And a lot of companies have this like public feedback boards, like Kenny, like some of the competitors we have, like User Voice. And I think they work, again, like well for small products that want to build a community, like that's great. But for as you get larger, it just becomes frustrating because the items that are at the top, they usually have been there for a while. And even if you deliver the top 5 features, then you have the next top 5 that have been there for a while. So it's like always a never-ending task. So I would approach this differently, and this is what we're looking to do. Like, how do you still get the feedback from customers? Be able to close the loop with them when something is happening or engaging with them without this all being public. So there's some ideas that we have that we want to attack later this year and released to help people manage feedback, external and internal as well, better.
It's great. I'm definitely going to steal some of those as recommendations for some of my clients, especially like cleaning out the backlog board, having some kind of automation that just deletes those issues after a certain period of time. So if you see those featured in a LinkedIn post in the future for me, I'll make sure to give you credit.
They're all good. Yeah. It's just even like 200, 300 issues. And if you have to go through them like all the time, it's just such a mental load. It takes up so much time and very little benefit because you just read through it, have to read through it. And then you say, okay, we're going to do this later. It's just not really worth the time.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that I've struggled with. And typically when I'm helping implement, a new solution for a company, usually their backlog's relatively small. So we don't actually cross that problem while we're doing the consulting, but it's definitely something we can suggest as an automation that's just pre-built, like saying, hey, if this hasn't been touched, we're just going to auto delete it. Give us a timeline. This is, best practice setup. And I think that's a really, really good approach.
So one thing that you can do as well, which helps is like as they come in the first time, you categorize them into different product areas. And once you get to that product area, you can see, it's like, okay, what are the items that we have on the backlog that are related that we could like work on at the same time as we build new features here or improve this area to tell a more holistic story. So you can just narrow down on those items and include them based on kind of the theme that you're working on, rather than having to look through all of this and like prioritize between all of the items. So I found that works well. But again, like if something's not been touched for like a year, and if it's important, you probably remember as well.
Yeah. What's your method of categorization? Would that be like a label field, a component, something else?
Yeah, we use components just because it gets a little bit less messy. Yeah. Sometimes you use labels, but I found them to, especially as a team gets bigger. Yeah, it just gets to like people name things slightly differently, so you don't have them in the same category. So like using predefined components is what we do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. And we also have things like, so we're starting like a focus, for example, on conversion. Like how do we onboard people better? What are the friction points? So basically creating a component for like friction. And every time I hear something from a customer, we'll just add that to the friction list. And then we basically have a week that we work on just friction.
Do you have a separate board for that or project, or is that like combined into one place?
All in the same, yeah.
Really? Honestly. You don't want to separate those things, like maybe onboarding experience or client retention or something along those lines?
Well, it's separated through a component. So you can always like set up a filter to kind of get only the issues that you want.
Okay. I would typically advocate and say like, hey, separate that board. But, there's obviously multiple ways to do it in Jira.
Yeah.
I would say separate it just from the scope of if you have a lot of team members within that project that aren't necessarily developers, which it's not the case for your team yet, but maybe in the future will be. Having that team have their own project, not needing to be in the development project and, seeing all those development tasks needlessly. Having a separate project for that is typically going to be best practice.
Yeah, no, like if it's not a development team or not part of the development team, definitely you can set up a separate board. Yeah, like we wouldn't have like a marketing board, for example. In terms of onboarding, it's usually like what I'm referring to is more like kind of like, I didn't understand, like we had customer writing in and say, like you have templates and there's AI. I didn't know how that interacts with the AI settings. The other one's like, how does it work?
So is that like a bug or a feature request? What do you throw that in as? in
This
terms
is
of like
what
an
I
issue
call
type?
friction. Like it's not really a bug, but it's kind of like there's obviously a friction point where people don't understand like how it
So
works,
is
and
that
it's
like an issue type called friction point, or is there something else that you associate it with?
just a task in that case, and then we categorize it as friction. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, that's actually a really, really interesting approach. Sometimes I see teams, creating a specific issue type for that, or just using a task if it's a little more simple. But I guess I was just curious in terms of like, is that kind of a bug in a way, or is
Yeah.
that kind of a feature request in a way if they're trying to get more clarity on something? But task, I think, makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. So we only have like stories, tasks, and epics. And to be honest, I think like sometimes we
Mhm.
struggle between like story and task. We're trying like
All right.
because we don't write user stories. Like
Mhm.
it's like one of the things that
Is
it's like
that something you
controversial.
feel like teams are
Yeah,
moving away from, stories in general,
I think so.
like development teams as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think
I
it's less
definitely read
efficient?
more about like, oh, it's a bit of a waste of time to write like stories and write them in. And
Yeah.
I feel like if you like rewrite like really short requirements into the release notes, into the ticket, and try to write them in a way that then the AI can take those requirements and turn it into release notes. Like,
Mhm.
so you like as you use released, you kind of like learn a bit like, okay, what actually turns like into good AI, or like how do we customize it that it's that's also a good message for customers in the end. And
Mhm.
definitely started to tailor our like descriptions on the tickets more towards what the outcome at the end as well, which is good because you basically have the outcome in mind, and that's what you want from a product
Mhm.
manager or from engineer to think about like what is actually the deliverable, not just the technical implementation, but how does it feel, how does it work, and like what's the value of it.
That's a great point. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for jumping on and taking the time for talking about your product and some of its use cases. Where can the audience go to find you, find Released?
Yeah, the most active on LinkedIn. So just reach out, Jens Schumacher, Atlassian. You'll probably find me, or Release these days. And yeah, on Twitter sometimes, or X, but yeah, less so these days. It's just gotten a bit crazy there.
Yeah.
Feels like,
Awesome.
yeah. Thanks
Well,
for
thank
having
you
me
so
on.
much for being here. I really appreciate your perspective and, talking about some of your product and what you've built. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.